Going, everyone? Welcome to the Thursday, May 26th board meeting. I'm going to call us to order. We only have 3 of us here today. But we're going to do the official roll call. Here.
Marla Franz. Here. Heidi Hall. Here. Scott and Julie Broder are absent.
Thank you. We're going to now do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all stand and join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the Okay. The board met in closed session. A number of items. On item 2.1, on motion of board member Hirota, seconded by board member France, the board voted to approve a stipulated expulsion order, which was approved on a vote of 4 yes to 0 with 1 absent. On item 2.4, very happy to announce that we have appointed 2 interim principals. The Board of Trustees took action during this meeting to appoint Mr. Greg Sloan as the interim principal of Granite Bay High School effective immediately, and Mrs. Lindsay Cutts as the interim principal of Antelope High School effective July 1, 2022. That passed the board on a vote of 3-0 with 2 absent. And so I'm going to read you a little bit about each of these folks so you know a little bit about them. Mr. Sloan has 20 years of experience in education, serving as a teacher, coach, and administrator. Prior to joining Granite Bay High School as an assistant principal in 2017, Mr. Sloan spent 15 years as a social science teacher, head track and cross-country coach, athletic director, department chair, instructional coach, and new teacher introduction coach in the Galt Union and Placer Union High School districts. Throughout his tenure as a Grizzly, Mr. Sloan has proved himself to be a calm, innovative, and inclusive leader. He understands how to build teams, encourages shared decision-making, and forms positive relationships with students, parents, and staff. He is patient and thorough, always taking time to listen and seeking input before making important decisions. These qualities, along with his experience with AP, IB, and CTE programs of study, dual enrollment, and instructional coaching, make him a tremendous asset to our district and an excellent choice to lead Granite Bay High School. Let's all welcome him. Up for us. Next, I'd like to introduce Miss Lindsay Cutts, a graduate of Roseville High School. Ms. Cutts returned to her alma mater in 2007 as a teacher, coach, and later as the activities director. She's very student-centered and relationship-focused. She has always chosen to work with our struggling and most at-risk learners. At Roseville High School, Ms. Cutts taught English language development, AVID, and English language arts, as well as serving as the school's activities director, PBIS lead teacher, link crew facilitator, water polo coach, and softball coach. Since joining Antelope High School as assistant principal in 2016, she continues to shine as an instructional leader. In addition to her work with ELD, PBIS, and student activities, Mrs. Cutts has been instrumental in planning and implementing dual enrollment, CTE programs of study, and expanding the Wellness Center. She's friendly, approachable, and has a tremendous sense of humor, which are all endearing qualities that have helped her create and maintain positive relationships with students, parents, and staff. In addition, Ms. Cutts has received numerous awards for her outstanding work as a teacher and administrator, including being selected as this year's Administrator of the Year in CTE for Placer County. She's ready to be principal, and her continued commitment to excellence will help engage, inspire, and prepare the students of Antelope High School. Please stand up so we can welcome you officially. Either of you have anything to say? You've got your moment. Short and sweet. That's the way we like it. And we know you both have activities at your schools that you need to get to, so we are going to let you get to work. Welcome. Thank you very much. Heard 2 other items in closed session with no reportable action on either of those. All right. With that, we're gonna move right into announcement of meeting protocols. As you know, we'll have the public comment section where anybody who would like to speak on any items that are not on the agenda tonight can speak for up to 3 minutes. We have a few cards. I don't think they're for that. In addition, anybody who'd like to speak on any of the individual agenda items may speak. We allow 3 minutes per person unless we have more than 10 cards, which judging on the side of the crowd, I don't think we'll have that. But if we did, it would limit the time to 1.5 minutes each. Do we have anyone who'd like to speak on, oh, we're not there yet, never mind. Communications.
We have no communications this evening.
We do not have a student board representative here either. Committee reports. We don't have any report from any of our committees either. Now we have public comment. I don't have any cards for public comment. Is there anyone? Yep. Oh, we have one. Come on up. Just state your name for us and you have 3 minutes.
Hey, my name's Heidi Fiddler. I just took over as the Oakmont Performing Arts Boosters president. And I'm here to bug you guys about helping us fund our band program. And that's really all I've got to say. I mean, I'm not really prepared. I thought there was going to be a lot more going on and I'd have no time. I mean, I think you already know Miss Ponsetti's been here a bunch of times and bothered you guys about this. And we all rallied when we had the issue with the new director. And I just want to start being here and being more involved and letting you know that that program is incredibly important to me and the kids. And we would love to be able to make it better for them. And that takes money. So think about it. Help us out.
Great. Thank you. Good timing. We're going to be talking budget soon. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Anybody else like to address us under open session? Okay, with that, we're going to move on to the consent agenda, unless someone has any items that they would like to pull. Yeah. So we're going to pull 4.5. Any other items request to be pulled from the consent agenda? Not seeing anyone. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda? Absent 4.5.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, roll call vote.
SP Constant,
Yes.
Heidi Hall,
Yes.
and Roma France.
Yes.
I think we'll go ahead and just take 4.5 now, so I don't forget it later. So we'll go to 4.5, which is the school plans for student achievement. And did you have something
Yeah,
you wanted to
I'd
start
like
with?
to make a comment.
Okay.
I would like to encourage all parents to read through those. I was impressed at the amount of time and effort clearly was put into those, and they're all unique. It shows a bit of their character of each school. Specifically, what I noticed in those were the CAS scores. And it kind of just left me, and I wanted to bring them out because I feel like as we're talking about the Lcap, it's important to understand what those scores were, because they're not really shown in Lcap, and not great. I feel some hope that I believe our district can do a lot to raise them, but I think we should also be aware of where we're at. And I know we had a COVID bump, drop, but I just want to raise an awareness to it because it was a little hidden. They're 60 to 80 page documents, and I would just encourage every parent to read their schools. And we should just keep those scores in mind as we talk about going forward in the future. But I feel positive. I believe we can. I know our hearts are to raise those scores. So that's all I wanted to share.
Say before I get public comment. All right. Karen. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. And my name is Karen Combest. I have a daughter at Oakmont High School, and I not only read the school site plan, I appreciate those of you who took the time to read each and every one before this meeting. But I also commented and was participating in the school site council meeting as a participant when the topic was addressed. I think I was there with Deanna Ponsetti, and there was no opportunity to provide any feedback that would then result in any changes. So I did want to call out a couple of things as a parent of a student at Oakmont that I found concerning in my review. And the first, I would just say, there's a couple of things that Oakmont's school site plan is referencing that I have concerns with. It's referencing the National Equity Project, which, as board members, you're probably aware, cabinet too, for multiple years now, that was off the table from my understanding. It was no longer funded. They're referencing on page 7 and 9. They're also referencing on 19 as a current statement. The OHS teaching staff continue to attend and participate in CRT training as well as NEP trainings in an ongoing effort to meet the diverse needs of the students attending OHS. So I would just ask what's going on with the NEP and the National Equity Project at Oakmont in particular. So if somebody could take that perhaps as an action item and follow up. In addition, when I look over the plan, I am concerned by, on page 19, the number one thing, which is with the opening of West Park and the decreasing in population, and I will quote, the decrease in population will decrease teacher staffing, which over time will impact the number of course offerings available to OHS students. And then it goes on to describe some things there. And what I'll just say is this plan doesn't really support my student and many students at Oakmont. And that's because it's going to continue to be challenging to get A to G courses, AP and IB courses. And for my student, just having access to A to G, CTE, and a graduation is not enough to be prepared for college. So I would ask that at Oakmont, you look at that, or you start directing students who have goals of college to another high school. And you make it really clear what Oakmont's going to have and what it's not going to have. Their key areas line up with the Lcap, college and career life ready, student-centered instruction, wellness and safety, and equity inclusion. And there's that term again, which still has not been defined, although I think Oakmont has tried to define it in their school site plan. I won't read it. You guys can read it yourselves. But what I will say is something that struck me when I was reading all of them, and I have never seen so many references to race in a document in my life. So, I've never really called my daughter a white girl, and maybe that's because she's white, but she's always been a smart kid or a good student or a soccer player or a brat or something, but I've never seen so much. And with all this equity focus and all this concern about diversity, we keep reinforcing that everyone is different and different and different. We keep calling out the differences by the color of their skin. And that's just what struck me over and over and over again. And I don't know if that's by design or not, but I think it's not good for what the ultimate goal is, which is not to do that. I know you have, measurements by cohorts and all of that, but that was glaring to me. So I'll leave it at that, again, with the plea to please look at keeping rigorous course curriculum at Oakmont so that those students who want it can have academic excellence in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
So on Monday, I asked about vision for declining enrollment schools. And I'm just wondering, just a question of when can we work through that?
Just a quick question regarding the National Equity Project, comments on that. Can
That's
that
a
be addressed?
referral to 2020. I talked about what they did in last year, not this year.
Because we, at the end of last year, is that correct? Okay. Anything else? With that, we would need a motion on item 4.5.
Motion to approve.
Motion from Marla and second from Heidi. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. All right, 3-0. I don't believe we have. Next up is 6.1, the Lcap Plan and Lcap Budget. A public hearing. Go ahead. Who's leading it? Roll.
Chair, we did the big presentation on Monday to share and make really transparent
how we came up with the LCAP plan and all the involvement that went through it. Tried to represent that a little bit in the write-up. And today is a chance for us to listen and hear if there are additional questions. Just a reminder to the audience that while you may like to come up and speak verbally, if you would like it to be documented in writing, we would need you to fill out the LCAP card, which we have in the back. And that specifically triggers the response in writing that is part of the protocol. And that would be your choice and preference as far as how you'd like to share those questions. But then we'll leave it to you unless there's other questions I can answer before.
So before we open the public hearing part, I had at least one question. Did you have any questions? Yeah. My question is actually just more of a clarification. Can you talk about the 3-year lock-in period? You and I have had a few discussions, and I think that's important for a mindset and a frame of mind as we move forward. So if you can explain when things are approved, how long they are in, what modifications can or cannot be made, who's the authority for those changes and all that, so that we have an understanding of that, then we'll open up the public hearing.
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity and for the dialogue. The LCAP plan is a 3-year plan. It was approved last June for the first year. So we're wrapping up year 1 and we have 2 more years on this particular plan, which means the goals and the metrics in particular. And we have a lot more flexibility on the actions and services. So the what we do can be fully customized through our input process. That's all in the legislation, but the actual broad goals cannot change unless we had a typo, which I don't think we do on those. And then the metrics are supposed to be with us for 3 years. But I did get a few questions over the past week since our Monday presentation, and with the help of Ms. Judy Fisher and the Placer County Office of Education, we did get a little bit of clarification. So Placer County is our approver, the Office of Ed. They actually have to approve and certify our LCAP. So our board needs to take action before July 1 on LCAP to get the money. And then we submit it immediately to the county and they have to certify, or they can kick it back and say, sorry, it's not approvable. And so one of the questions we asked them this afternoon was about metrics, because we have a few metrics that we don't love. And frankly, we thought we might get some feedback tonight, and we wanted to know how much flexibility do we have. And they did give us some guidance on how we could massage some of those metrics and what they would support or what they would not support. And so if there are any particular questions or based on the feedback, we'll see what we can do within those guidelines. Again, largely the metrics and the goals stay for 3 years, but we have been given a little bit of guidance as far as how we could massage those if that's applicable.
Thank you. And I'll just remind everyone, this is a public hearing. This is not an action item, so we will not be taking any action tonight or providing any specific direction to our staff. This is for us to hear from the members of the public. So, yeah.
So on Monday, I asked about adding metrics around maybe referrals for discipline, because we have the expulsion and suspension end goals of 0, but we don't have anything in between to show progress. Is that something we can add, or is that for in the future?
We could.
Okay.
We can add unlimited. What I would caution is those are great interim metrics for us to look at, and we look at a lot more data than we put in the plan. So we're hesitant to put, hundreds of data sets in the plan, because then we spend all of our time doing plan versus implementing and doing the work. So yes, referrals and intervention data, those are things that we can pull, and we do pull. We have a discipline focus team that does look at all of that data. And I think there's an interesting balance that we can look at, is how much do we put in the plan and how much do we look at? And that's something we're working through with that advisory committee as well.
So with that, any of those type of changes we'll entertain at our next action. I have one card, so if anyone else wants to speak on this item, make sure you let us know. Shemaine, you get to be first. No, I saw a hand in the back.
Good. Okay. Good evening. Let me start off by saying that 4 days to get through 110 pages or whatever it was incredibly challenging. And nearly impossible. I felt that was kind of hardly fair or inclusive to any parents who wanted to review it, or who wished to participate in public comment. I had a massive incredibly hard time. On top of all other content in this incredible agenda, which was very big with a lot of stuff. So I would just ask that when we're doing big stuff like this, we consider that if that's possible. And while I'd never have time to address everything in this topic, there was quite a bit. I will address a few. I found it to be great in some areas. There were things I loved to see. And I found it in other areas to be very discriminatory. I found it mostly targeted to unduplicated or underrepresented students rather than all students, which in what I heard the other day and the goals didn't really align. I think I understand that this district exists to serve all students in an equal and fair manner, providing equal opportunity and rigor, academic performance, and college and career and life readiness. That's why my kid is here. Kids, I have one graduated. It, referenced unduplicated students. Only 22% of our district are represented and discussed in almost every other area of this budget, while the rest of the students, which are 78%, were clearly left out. In the plan, it clearly stated every LCAP goal and action is aligned to help unduplicated student groups to be considered first and foremost when addressing the services described. Focus and attention is on targeted students and student populations, which was low income, ELA, students with disabilities, foster, homeless, etc. These groups, according to the LCAP, are given priority not only to funding, but even to classes. This was really disheartening to me. CTE, dual enrollment, AP, IB, those are all things that all kids should have access to. It shouldn't matter your race, your color, your gender, none of those things. The LCAP stated 50,000 for dual enrollment. Our unduplicated student groups will have priority registration for these classes. For CTE programs, it states 292,000 increase enrollment by giving underrepresented groups preference in the CTE courses at registration. Direct marketing to underrepresented groups, create an awards program, and bring in industry professionals mirroring underrepresented groups. A specialist will increase recruitment and retention efforts for underrepresented groups in CTE and dual enrollment. So I'm trying to understand how that's equitable and inclusive of all students. Those are the very words that the district and administration and staff throw around. And this is kind of hypocritical, in my opinion, when we're doing stuff like this. According to the above, my child who wants to participate and have equal opportunity to enroll in college and career ready pathways like DE or CTE would only be considered after the underrepresented or whatever it was, underrepresented, it wasn't underrepresented, I forget. Group. And so, I mean, that's concerning to me, unduplicated. So I feel like we're going backwards here. I mean, how is this any different than whites getting priority at the water fountains or whites getting to sit in the front of the bus? It was wrong then, it's wrong now. It's wrong for anybody to feel that way. The answer is
time is up if you can wrap up.
Okay. So I guess in closing, this violates a lot of board code, ed code, a lot of code. I would ask that you guys really consider some of the statements that are in here and will either not approve it or fix it. So thank you.
Thank you. Christina. Welcome.
Jermaine.
That's okay.
I'm a numbers person. So I have a student that goes to West Park. So it's kind of seeing distinctions from other schools because they're established. And then looking at the budget, I guess, because the LCAP is a significantly substantial document that should be thoroughly looked at from everybody. So I would just ask that, we actually get opportunity to read it, to be able to sit at the table and have these in-depth discussions because we all want the best for our kids. But then as I quickly tried to skim with the little time, I just started to see some inconsistencies, and I don't know if it's because I'm not following and tracking how the budget matches to the LCAP or in relation to the school plans for student achievement plans. But just one example was looking at in the budget, and I already lost the picture, but there was reference to one of the tables that the home visit program is not projected, but then it was referenced in Oakmont's student plan for student achievement that was a resource as far as, reaching the kids. And so it's like, are we doing our checks and balances and being thorough so we're not creating additional issues and hurdles in the future? So I would just ask for more time and actually would like to see more of collaboration from everybody involved so we can, get through these hurdles together. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this item? Go ahead and close the public hearing and just make a comment. That's one of the reasons we have this public hearing and don't take action, is so that we have time before we actually take action on the items. If you have any particular questions on those budget issues or alignment issues, email them in to probably April and Joe, or one of us, and we'll get them to the right people for you. All right, with that, we'll move on to our next public hearing, which is 6.2, the preliminary district budget public hearing.
Thank you. So this is our first public hearing for our budget that we're planning to bring to the board for approval on June 9th. Just as a kind of a reminder that we have to develop a budget before the state actually adopts their budget. So it's one of those challenges where we've been working since January, developing all aspects of our budget. The January governor's budget comes out, which gives us a little help, but then we just got most recently the May revise from the state of California. And so we were able to, on the fly, do some of those last minute adjustments based on the May revise. Then we'll come back in June after this public hearing and do some last minute fine tuning, and we'll adopt our budget. And then the state will adopt their budget. So there will likely be changes that we'll have to implement after we adopt our budget. It's typically included, it's what's called a 45-day revision. It's 45 days after the state adopts their budget. And it's only necessary if you have substantial changes, like over a certain amount. But typically we do have to, because there may be large one-time monies that a lot of times the state passes certain things that does have an impact on us. So that's just a picture of what to come. So I've got just a pretty short presentation of some of the key factors that go into our budget. One of the predominant numbers that we look at each year is our enrollment, because our enrollment really impacts the majority of our funding. It impacts our staffing levels. It impacts our sites and their site-based budgets. And so we get a demographic study each year. I like to include some of the prior years so you can kind of see a little bit of the trend. We've generally been, for the most part, a growing district over the years. There's been a couple years back in the 2010 to 2015, we may have had a few years where we're pretty much flat, or maybe had a year where we declined a small number of students. But you could see over the last, from 2016-17 to 2020-21, we had some growth. And you see in 21-22, we had a little bit of a decline. A lot of that was related to COVID, as we had a number of students who graduated early, decided to homeschool, took different options. What you'll notice across the state, this was a pretty significant issue, more so at the elementary and middle schools, as parents chose to, when there's distance learning, they chose to either homeschool or send their kids to a charter school or do something different. So our impact was much smaller, but you see our projection for 22-23, we're back to a growth. But the numbers you see in 23-24, 24-25 are relatively flat. And these are based on demographic projections, and a lot of it is when you look at the number of students in 7th grade and 8th grade and projecting those out. So I personally think we probably will grow as a number of those students went to charter schools or stayed home, but our demographer is they're very much black and white. They count, the number of students. So for right now, we have a pretty conservative estimate on enrollment over the next couple of years, but they do have higher projections when you go 3, 4, or 5 years out, because we still are a growing district. And look out at West Park and many areas, there's a lot of homes still being built. So, but these are what are built into our budget right now, and we update these the enrollment projections each year. The other biggest factor that impacts our funding is the local control funding formula. So this is the amount of base funding we receive per student. And over the last 10 years, there's been a pretty concerted effort to provide growing funding for schools in the state of California. If you go back 10 years, we were about, depending on the study, when they compared us to other states, we typically range from 45th to 50th in funding per student. And so that was an issue that the state recognized, and they've been slowly paying more and more towards education. So we have gotten a little bit higher in those rankings. We're still below the average across the country in funding per student. But you see, we actually have a projected pretty big increase in 22-23. And then there's some additional increases that the state's projecting in 23-24 and 24-25. Now, I will say that just last week, before I got all this ready, we got updated numbers from the state for those out years, 23-24 and 24-25, and they're both a bit higher than what I have presented here. So all things being equal, come June 9th, the numbers are going to look a bit better, as I've just been working on implementing those higher projections from the state for those future years. I'd like to go over the pension cost. This was actually a pretty significant slide for the last 5 or 6 years, because you saw a number of years of pretty significant increased pension costs in STRS and PERS. What you'll notice is from 21-22 to 22-23, there's about a $2 million increase that's built into the budget. And right now, the state is projecting relatively flat STRS and PERS rates for us in the next couple of years. I will say, donuts in the Oakmont parking lot. I will say, based on the stock market results of the last 6 months, I would project that the STRS and PERS funds have not done as well. We get an update around like September, Pete maybe know exactly, but we get an update of how they did on their July to June. They have a target of around 7% returns each year. So if they get less than 7% in the long term, that impacts our rates. When they do better, they go much higher than 7%, then that can reduce our rates. So right now, built into our budget, we have a pretty big increase next year on our PERS and STRS costs, but relatively flat. But because of those concerns and what we've talked about before, we have set aside our pension reserve trust, our pension section 115 pre-funding trust. And so I think we're starting to take steps to prepare accordingly on that side. Really, really small, so sorry about that if you can't read, but these are our new positions. I will say, compared to prior years, this is the total amount of dollars impact to the general fund is quite a bit less than we had been. For the last couple of years, we had a lot of new positions with the opening of West Park. As we had a lot of new positions, now that West Park is next year will be pretty much similar size to our other comprehensive high schools. You only see those top couple. There's a few extra positions at West Park. You'll see the opening of Roosevelt Pathways. There's some position changes there, but that was actually a net reduction in cost to the general fund. And then I won't go through all of these. One I'll just point out a little bit is the athletic directors. That was a change where we increased our release periods given to each site. Prior to this year, we had one release period for the athletic director at each comprehensive site. And so they would teach 2 classes and then have 1 class off to do athletic director duties. Over the years, the job and the duties for those positions has increased substantially. And so many districts actually have a full-time athletic director where they don't even do any teaching. And so we're going to take a one step this coming year and we're increasing their release period from 0.33 to 0.66. So they'll still teach 1 class each semester, but that they would have other release periods off to deal with all the athletic director duties, which are pretty significant. And when you get down to the grand total, all of the new positions and reclassifications, the impact of the general fund is about $458,000 that's built into the budget. Now, sometimes there are items that don't impact the general fund. Like a number of these positions are being funded out of categorical programs, such as our ELO grant or ESSER grants, where we are able to hire professional development specialists to help us improve in those areas, address some of the learning gaps. Through all of these numbers, but this is a high level executive summary of our budget. You see in 21-22, there's our estimated actuals. And in 22-23, you'll see this 1.1 number. I'll just highlight. That's our deficit spending we're projected for next year. This includes the recent tentative agreement with our teachers union and actually the projected costs for all of our employees for next year, as well as the latest projections from the state. I have an estimate of a potential additional contribution to our pension reserve trust. So I'll talk about that in a minute. Some one-time funding we're going to get from the state. Real quickly, we do these little charts, and it's interesting to see where the money comes from. The bulk of our money comes from what I said earlier, the local control funding formula. So the reason you see it broken out between state and local is what we get in property taxes, but it's a formula that's absent property taxes. So whatever property taxes don't pay for, the state pays the remaining amount. So that's still the bulk of our funds. The state revenue is actually quite a bit higher than normal, and a lot of that is to do with some of the projections from the state of one-time funding that the governor's proposed in the May revise. Where does the money go? So the bulk of our money, we are a people industry. Most of our costs are always end up being salary and benefits. And actually, this is going to be, when the budget is all finalized, a higher number than it is right now, because of the short time frame of we didn't have time to put the recent salary increases into salary and benefits and break it all out. So a lot of those are sitting in this category, but once we have more time to update those, they will fall down into the salary and benefits. What we typically see is our salary and benefits are around 80 to 85% of our costs, which always makes it difficult when we have budget cuts, because there's not a whole lot we can do without impacting people. It becomes difficult in years when we have to make cuts. This is the latest multi-year projection. You'll see, even with the recent updates from the state, the recent tentative agreement with the union, we still project a surplus in that third year. I will say both 23 and 25 are going to see improvements at the June 9th budget, because those updated numbers from the state that we just got this past week. And you'll see the unassigned balances. We still have any fund balances. What you'll also notice is we tried to get below the 10%. Actually, we're pretty close here, 10.13. That's the new reserve cap the state has implemented, where we cannot be above 10% at our adopted budget. So that's something you can look out for. And you see in our projections, we're projecting right now to stay below. Aside from that slight increase, the following years we're projected to be under 10%. This is a quick summary of our other funds. I'll just point out Fund 17 is our most recent pension trust. You see $1 million. That was what the board directed earlier this year. And so that's a new fund that was just started. But you see all our other funds like Adult Fund, Cafeteria Fund. And then these are our developer fee funds, which are our construction project funds. So some of the highlights from the May revise, the LCFF, the base COLA augmentation that's proposed by the governor is at 10%. It's a 6.5% statutory COLA, but he proposed additional augmentation, which effectively gets us to the 10%. Many legislators on the state and assembly are pushing for 15%. Right now, this week and next week, they go into negotiations. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll find out what the end results are. But it seems like our floor is going to be this 10%. If anything, it could potentially go higher. The one-time discretionary grant, the estimate is about $13.3 million. So the good thing about this grant is it's proposed to be fully discretionary, whereas a lot of the prior grants had a lot of strings attached. You have to spend it on certain things. You have to do a ton of reporting requirements that were pretty onerous. And so where many districts were having to hire people to help spend the funds and make sure we followed all the rules. And so this is one where we've got a lot more flexibility. Additional funding is being proposed in the deferred maintenance and facilities. And so I was happy to see that, as that's something that we continue to need to be able to take care of our facilities. One that I was expecting, was surprised, is I didn't see a proposal to address PERS and STIRS costs. Some of the legislators have definitely continued to push for that. And so I still think that's a possibility. We could see some pension relief, but we won't know until next month. So lastly, here are next steps. Come June 9th, we'll be bringing, as you just had the LCAP public hearing, that has to go at the same time as the budget. So you'll have the LCAP adoption on June 9th, followed by our budget adoption. And just a glimpse out into the future, in September, at the end of June, we'll be closing our books and bringing back to you our unaudited actuals in September for 21-22. And then we'll also be, we'll be working in those both years at the same time. But come December, you'll see the first update of our 22-23 budget, which is called our first interim report. So those are just some dates to look forward to, because I know this is everybody's favorite topic. So
Always anxiously look forward to budget. Any questions before I open up the public hearing?
I do. And I asked you this last month. We had someone come up and ask about band. And would you just explain how you did to me about where funding for co-curricular activities usually comes from? And it's this, I don't want to call this, it's the fund that every high school gets that's at their discretion. Does that make sense? Because we see all this money and then why can't we put a little bit to some bands?
Yes. So each year we meet with all the principals and we give them a site-based budget allocation. It's a very high level. It's $1 per student, and we're actually higher than most districts around. So we've got principals who've been at other districts can attest to. We give a good amount of money to our sites and give a lot of flexibility on how they use their resources. We also allow full carryover. So if they have money that they don't spend from one year, they're able to carry it over to the next year. But we typically don't dictate where they spend those funds. So we give them flexibility to go to wherever they have the most needs. So we have done some additional, we will at the district level make some choices to provide additional resources to certain sites. And we have done that this past year for both Oakmont and Roseville, particularly on the staffing side, as it's a transition when they were declining enrollment so much. And so we did some additional staffing enhancements to both of those sites to help with getting a new band director, getting a football coach, and getting some of these programs when they have openings. And so we have made certain decisions like that at the district level. And then we continue to look at that each year to see if there's additional things the district can do, especially when they have really significant cost of something that just came out of nowhere that we can help with. That kind of. Yes, we did last year. We received some money out of the ESSER grant. And so there were some additional costs related to instruments and masks for instruments and things. So we had out of our ESSER and different grants, we were able to provide funding to each site to do some of those investments and to place some of their instruments and stuff like that.
Well, I'm just trying to get a question answered.
Right, no, and she
In a
just
nice
walked-
way. Oh,
I was
she's-
gonna-
oh, she did?
She
Oh,
just walked out. I
oh,
was gonna
well,
ask the
I
same.
can't even see. Okay.
Oh. Okay.
One thing I will say, a lot of times, especially with a newer principal too, it takes a while to get a handle on their budget. And so, but a lot of times once they have like a year under their belt, they have a better idea of where they have more money available to them and where they can make investments on certain areas, certain programs where they really need to.
Questions before I open the public hearing? Okay, with that, I'll open up the public hearing. I don't believe I have any cards for this item yet. Is there anyone here to speak to this budget item in the public hearing? Seeing none, will close the public hearing. And as a reminder, we're not taking any action, but there is opportunity to ask any additional clarification questions if you have. Nope. Okay. We're going to move into our action matters. First one is going to be item 7.1, which is consideration of a fee study justifying an increase in level 1 statutory school facility fees. I assume that's you as well.
Yes. So I'll kind of talk, these next two are kind of related. So the way we get funding for a lot of our facilities is through developer fees. So anytime a new house is built, people make significant improvements to their house, like additions to their house. There's a process where they go through the city and they have to pay developer fees. The majority of our houses in Roseville and in our district are under what are called mutual benefit agreements. And so that's what you see typically out at West Park, where the builder, before they even start selling homes, realize the benefit, particularly in our community, of having high quality schools and good facilities. And so they agree to a separate fixed dollar amount that every time they build a house, we receive a certain dollar amount. So as an example, majority of the new homes out in West Park, we get about $10,000 per home that's built. That comes to our developer fee, Fund 25. And so we use that fund to build a new school such as West Park. That's one of the funding sources, as well as do improvements across the district. You know, when we need to replace roofs and do deferred maintenance projects or do other upgrades like our stadium snack bar upgrades we're doing. And so that's the predominant resource we use for facilities, as they're very, very expensive. So the process for collecting developer fees in most districts is through what's called level 1, level 2 developer fees. And so it's a fixed amount that the state approves and updates. And so the state updated the minimum level of developer fee just recently. And in order to charge that higher rate, we have to do a justification study, basically looking at the number of students we have and looking at the cost of building and essentially justifying the need for that higher fee. Now, these developer fees are mostly smaller projects that aren't under our mutual benefit agreement. So the majority of our homes are being paid separate from this. We still always have infill projects that throughout our district that fall under this level one fees. There are many districts who go through a process to get level 2 or level 3 fees, which are higher fees. We've never pursued that. We've never had a need because we have our mutual benefit agreements and have great relationship with our developers. And so it hasn't been an issue. This can be a contentious issue of trying to go to level 2 or 3 fees. Developers and districts are, can be arguing about what's necessary. We don't have that situation here, but this is a process we have to go through. So the first action item is this is the justification study that we're required to do and asking for the board to approve that justification study. And the second item would be a public hearing to collecting input from the public and depending on that, and then potentially approving the increase to our level 1 fees.
Great. Any questions? Have any cards for anyone looking to speak on 7.1, but I will ask. With that, we are looking for a motion on adoption of the developer fee justification study. And in a second, any discussion on that? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Unanimously, we'll now move into the public hearing, which is 7.2. I will open the public hearing. I have no cards on this item. Is anyone here to speak on item 7.2? I will close the public hearing. Any questions? Motion to adopt resolution 2215.
Second.
We have a second. See how much power you have when there's only 3 of us here?
We all have to do something.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying, oh no, roll call,
Roll
right?
call, yes.
Roll call.
Yes. P. Constant,
Yes.
Marla France.
Yes.
And Heidi Hall.
Yes.
Alrighty, moving on to item 7.3.
Yes, so this is a project that is actually funded out of our Fund 25 developer fees. Each year we put in some money for technology infrastructure upgrades. And so this project is, we've been working on our projectors across the district, and this is one of our last big purchases. You see 203 projectors moving to laser projectors that the benefits are much clearer, much easier to see. We don't have bulbs that we have to replace that we still have in some classrooms that start dimming after a time. And so these are better quality and will last longer and won't have that dimming issue. So we've got 203 Epson projectors and the quotes included, and staff recommends the approval of the purchase and installation of these projectors at a total cost of $269,000 and change.
We don't have any speaker cards. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Any questions or clarifications needed by the board? If
Is this for all schools?
Yes, there's
Forgive
we've been
me.
working at all the schools, and this particular project has a number at West Park High School, or not West Park, sorry. Tony, do you remember? I think it's most of the schools. I was thinking of the.
Yeah, this will cover actually the entirety of the district, including meeting areas, things of that nature. West Park obviously isn't included. They're totally fine right now. And most of these projectors wouldn't be applicable to, say, Oakmont, as most of their learning environments are LED TV screen based.
getting a lot from, let's say, this area right here. We share it across the district.
So, kind of with the need to build West Park High School, I would say the majority of it went to build the school. Now that the school's close to being mostly built, there's still a lot of homes to be built, and a lot of that funding will be used to kind of like upgrade, the existing sites, especially Roseville being 100+ years old, Oakmont 50+ years old.
Motion on this item?
Final motion.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That passes unanimously. We're going to move to item 7.4, but before we get started, I just wanted to make a quick statement. This is on the agenda as an action matter. However, there's been significant public interest in this item, and we've had a number of discussions with staff. What we are going to do today is we're going to have a presentation from staff on the issue. We're going to receive public comment on this issue, and we'll take action at a future date. So with that, April, are you?
I'll start it off,
Okay.
but both April and Tony both have quite a bit of experience. I'll kind of give a summary of where we're at and what this product does. So a number of years ago, the district, when we implemented Chromebooks, we started with a product called Goguardian. And the Goguardian has a number of features. One is for classroom management. And so that's when that's a Goguardian teacher module. And so that's where teachers are able to kind of keep an eye on what students are doing, assign work. They have a lot of capabilities while they're managing a classroom. But there's another piece of Goguardian called Goguardian Administration. There's a lot of features in there, but the one in particular that's related to this is one that notifies us of potential dangerous things that are being searched on the computer, or emails or documents that people are writing. And what was of particular interest to us was related to self-harm or harm to others. And so there are other items that can be utilized and can be, through artificial intelligence, can be noticed. And the way it works now with Goguardian is when someone, as an example, is starting to type up a suicide note, or is searching, how do I commit suicide, or is committing suicide painful, or is looking to something like potentially doing an action like bringing some violence to the school. So those items get sent to staff at our district or at the sites. So typically counselors or assistant principals, and they're able to follow up and maybe bring them to wellness and say, have a conversation with the student. And so the Goguardian has been around. We've had that for a number of years. One of the challenges is it's 24/7, but we've done it where they don't get a message to the assistant principal, whoever's there, until like the following Monday. So if something happens, someone started typing something up on Saturday, there's concern about when they would be able to follow up with that. And so what we found over the last couple of years, it's been very, very difficult to manage. As you know, the assistant principals are very busy, have a lot going on, and then it's kind of hard to address these issues. So we had concern that it was going to be addressed in a timely manner. So this is where we looked into this service from Gaggle, where they do that work for us. And so they monitor it 24/7, 365 days a year. So when our principals and counselors are out on Christmas break, Gaggle would still be doing this service, and they would be notifying if they needed to notify the police department or anybody. They handle that, and that responsibility is not on our district staff. And so that was the intent of this service. And I'll leave it to see if April or Tony, if there's items I missed, I try to give you a
Joe, you did a great job.
You will do
But I'm
much
gonna
better.
Be up here for questions.
Well, do you have anything? And then we'll
Yeah,
start
if we're
with
just
ours.
doing questions, a couple of things have happened this year that you're aware of in our district and certainly in the surrounding areas. But in addition to self-harm and harming others, we've had hacks of student email accounts that blast really awful and obscene items to people across the district that have been very hurtful. And we had a whole series of those happening earlier this year. And when we saw the presentation for Gaggle, that's one of the things that stood out to me is not only do they do the real-time monitoring like Joe was describing, but they also stop things from going out like that. If that had happened while we had Gaggle, those obscene messages would never have been received by the other party because it was sent by one of our student accounts that was hacked. It wasn't even sent by the student whose account it came from, but because it was obscene and inappropriate, the Gaggle system has basically that 3-second delay where it's screening real time. And it's not that they're reading everything, it's just got those algorithms, and that would have been flagged and paused and not sent and delivered. And that pause gives us that opportunity to intervene. And so while they would do it, and if our staff are there and ready, great, we'll act, or they'll put it on pause, or if it's that imminent danger, then they notify. They don't discipline our students. They don't make any changes to our policies. It's literally that notification and 24/7 system that allows us to have more eyes out there and see more things. And it's, again, just to our devices and our system and our network. So I know we can have a lot of details, but that's the big picture. And since it was close to home and we saw real things that what we had wasn't meeting that need, we thought this would be a really good service to help add to the safety of our system and our students and staff.
Yeah, I would add and just reiterate a piece that this isn't new information. This we've had a version of this service running for years. At this point, though, we're adding an outside resource to help us with our response time, as Joe was saying, because we did have concerns about being able to respond to some of those requests in a timely manner. So that by no means is this a new tool. This isn't a new, this isn't diving into new information that we didn't have in the past. In addition to that, these products comply with all California student data privacy laws, and we are very aware and we're cognitive to check all of those platforms as we move forward.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'd like to start off on this one. It's an issue where issues of civil liberties and privacy and safety that sort of come into collision with each other. Those of you who know me know I'm a fanatic on the civil liberty side of things, and I struggled with the same thing in my previous elected job when we were looking at automated license plate scanners, things of that nature, and the things that I think we need to be conscious of and look into and have answers to before we approve something like this. And I've had discussion with Dr. Moore today about most of this, is really not only the data gathering, but what data is gathered, like our locations, location services transmitted, are they gathered? Once we gather data, what is the data retention policy? Who holds the data? Where is the data held? If it's retained, how long is it retained? Is that data subject to public records requests? Because digital data is considered a public record in the state of California. I think those are things that we should be discussing. I think we also have to, and I'm not saying any of those are automatic outs or automatic ins, it's just things that I think we have to be conscious of when we weigh these competing interests against each other so that we can make an informed decision. I think we have to look at parental notifications. Are our current notifications sufficient in letting parents know what we are doing or not doing, and what a third party may be doing? Are there opt-out or non-opt-out provisions? I know we do have BYOD or bring your own device policies, but I also know that isn't equally administered. I have some kids that were able to bring their own device, had no problems, other kids that were told that they had to use Chromebook. So just seeing how we're doing that and how that is not only our policy, but how it's operationalized from the perspective of the students. And then, as we all know, or at least we on this side know, because we were notified, there's some issues of concern potentially with the organization that provides the software. So making sure that we have done any due diligence in following up on those notifications that we received from members of the public to make sure that we have vetted the vendor and have either confirmed or debunked some of the information that we have seen about it. And then going back to that data retention, I know it was mentioned about the laws, but how does FERPA and all those other acronym laws apply or not apply to the data and the gathering. So I don't expect any answers on any of that tonight. That's all stuff I just think is important for us to know to make an informed decision. And with that, I'll pass it over to the two of you. If either of you have any questions, and then I'd like to hear from the public, and we'll have an opportunity to ask more.
Just a couple quick questions, and same as Pete said, you don't need to answer these tonight, but how long have we had the Goguardian-ish?
Hate to throw a date out there, but I mean,
Probably like
14?
2016.
yeah,
15.
we were one of their initial adopting clients, so we were in early on that, and that product's grown quite a bit.
Okay, so we've had it going, I mean, approximately how many emails or, you know, content that's being shared get flagged? Do we have any?
I wouldn't venture to throw that number out there.
Okay.
It's quite a few, but not
Okay.
every flagged content gets actually drawn into something what's called like a smart alert to
Okay.
actually bring attention to something that's like a suicide prevention alert. So
Okay.
there's lots of flagged content like students searching inappropriate, materials, thing that's not really school appropriate, but it doesn't really draw it to your attention with something like what this Gaggle product's really monitoring for, right? Self-harm, harming others. Those things are kind of they're brought to the forefront with this particular platform.
Okay, so the main difference then, just to make sure that main difference is that the Gaggle just identifies those sooner and blocks them from being sent out. It gets flagged in the algorithm. The Goguardian didn't do that. You had to do it, or someone.
No, there was still a function there. It
Okay.
was that additional offsite staff member that's not part of our team that's actually active. So we still have smart alerts. It's still alerting staff. It's still assigning it as intervention needed. But with this product, there's some additional features, and as April brought up, there's also some additional email scanning features to help some of these more malicious softwares.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if your privacy concern is significantly different right now.
I don't know.
Okay, that's
kind
what
of-
And
your
we
questions
vet,
are.
and to be
Okay.
clear, we vet every product we purchase for that data privacy compliance. So we retain all ownership of our data. They're not allowed to sell our data. They're not allowed to use our data or share it with any companies that they associate with. The data is ours, and there's always a data deletion mechanism in there. So if a parent, say a student leaves our district, the parent can request the company to delete the data. And that's one of the requirements with the California student data privacy laws, is so that there's always a mechanism within the privacy contract where they can email in and they can make sure that that data does get deleted in a timely manner.
So just to clarify in my own head, some of the problems we're trying to solve, it sounds like we're trying to solve workload problems with assistance principals. I also had questions about the volume, because when I first heard about Gaggle's ability to search emails, okay, I know my kids don't email, and they don't email their friends. So the idea that we're stopping bullying or threats between email seems unlikely, but
Do you want to?
Yeah,
So-
I
so
guess
tell me if I'm
email
wrong.
used as a general term. I mean, it'll scan through content itself, right? So email, chat transcripts, Google Docs, right? There's lots of different modalities where students use to communicate. They'll even create a shared Word doc, and everybody will work in it, and then it'll be just lines of communication. So it's not just email.
So now it's so it'll be searching through Word docs that are
Everything in the Google Drive.
Yeah.
So in our system,
so
not their
so
private.
that's a huge difference from
Yes.
Goguardian.
Correct.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Similar
Or
still.
no?
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Does it actually do our
GoGuardian
Google
will
Docs?
search for content as well.
So what they were showing in the demo was pretty interesting, because they're seeing trends of how bullying takes place, right? Bullying doesn't often take place in emails anymore. It's in those Word documents that is shared. And sometimes they'll even use like invisible ink. Like it's basically white writing in white text, and they're just putting harmful and mean things. And they're able to just monitor that real time. And so let's say you're working on we do a lot of group projects and we're using technology. And so in that group project, if inappropriate things are being shared, those could be flagged. So it's not just, it's anything on our system.
Yeah, and to add to that, from what I've been told by some of my cohorts, is that Gaggle does a better job at that. So they both have similar AI technology built in that helps you kind of pull through this data, but Gaggle does do a better job with that wellness piece.
I have one more, I have questions that I forgot to ask.
Yeah.
Our discussion here has been centered around students,
Mhm.
but we also have adults, employees,
Mhm.
board members, members of the public who get on our systems. Does this monitor all activity?
It
Just
does.
student
It does not. It only monitors activity on student Chromebooks.
We're going to go ahead and hear from the public now. I have 2 cards. If you haven't turned in a card but want to speak on this, make sure you get one or let me know at the end. Jermaine or Karen, you guys can fight over who comes first, and then the other one goes second. Didn't time you last time, but we're going to time in 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's great. Good evening, Karen Combest. So I sent some emails that you probably read, maybe didn't read. I'm not going to reread them, but all the board members have them, and maybe you've shared them with others, which is fine. Quite frankly, if anybody wants it, I'd be happy to share it with you. I also looked at several articles about Gaggle, and as a parent, I am concerned about my students' privacy, and I'm also concerned about transparency. What are you guys looking for, and what do you intend to do with this information? And are you just, I heard self-harm as the focus, but then I heard bullying, but then I heard it's only on students' Chromebooks, so then I'd like to opt out. Can I opt out, and can I have my daughter bring her laptop in, and can she get Wi-Fi access and avoid all of this? I don't think so, because the software targets the platform, not the device, if I'm not mistaken. So it targets emails and it targets Google Classroom or Canvas. So that should be a clarifying point that you guys understand. And then if it's at the platform level, that means I can never opt out because my student needs to use those resources. So that's a problem for me. And then the staff that actually looks, so there is an IA component, right? But then the staff that is hired to manage that IA, artificial intelligence blockage or whatever, which looks for words, which I have a list here. I think I shared it with some of you of what it looks for. And then the safety representative who makes $10 an hour, and I think I shared their job description, who is an independent contractor, doesn't work for Gaggle, by the way, can be fired at any time. And they've been told that they have to use their own laptop. So that person should also, contract requires you to be able to view content of sensitive nature, including exposure to graphic content that may contain nudity. Well, let's hope that's not happening between students. But if it is, and that independent contractor can take a picture on his laptop of somebody's nude body, then that's a data concern that I have of as a parent for any student, not just my own, because God forbid she's not allowed to put nude pictures anywhere. And she's been told that, and she understands the value of privacy and understanding respect of these schools' property, right? So I have big concerns about that. And then what happens if it's over the weekend? Well, my understanding is if there's some threats, and this is judgment by a $10 an hour person. My daughter makes $15.50 at Topgolf, by the way. So I question what kind of people you're going to see in these safety, and they don't get a whole lot of training. So they then say, there's a, let's just say my daughter is writing an essay in her Word document about domestic violence. And she talks about hitting me, hit her, and all of a sudden she's flagged as an issue.
That's your time, so I'll give you a couple seconds to
Okay.
wrap it up.
Then that flag, if it's over a weekend, goes to the police department. And that police department can just come to my door and say, yeah, we understand your daughter's a risk or a threat. That's great. Thanks, guys.
Maine, followed by Christina.
So Karen obviously did some of the same work I did, I guess, because she's saying the same things I'm about to say. But a big problem that I have with this is that I hire remote employees, and I can tell you that you cannot get a good employee for $10 an hour, remote or in another country, because I have independent contractors in other countries. So what I read in all this is it's remote unmonitored work, a stranger, possibly a user in an overseas environment, is going to be monitoring our children. That raises a huge concern for me. They're going to, let's see, interest and enthusiasm for reading, because they're going to be reading all this content, access to high-speed internet, access to a computer, minimum operating system, minimum processor. These are all the job requirements. That is, provide your own computer. That's a problem. The company is providing the computer. Discussions on content in Slack. I mean, my question on that is that secure? Contracts can be terminated at any time. So if they can terminate at any time, how do they ensure the content is off that person's computer? And if you have multiple computers, you can take screenshots of that computer and share and all this kind of stuff. So that's concerning to me. They said they do background checks, but I mean, there's no guarantees they won't hire a pedophile here to watch my kids. So that's a concern to me. Again, going back to that $10 an hour. So I guess my questions are, do they hire foreign contractors or US based only? Where's the data stored? They market themselves as a recognized leader. I can tell you, being in marketing, this is marketing jargon. According to whose standards? Do they have data to support this claim? Can they prove the stats that they marketed to all of you about in the board docs? I think, you know, I struggle because I think the concept of it is amazing. Nobody wants to get kids shot up. Nobody wants kids to commit suicide, like all that, but I'm just not sure that this is the right thing. Another thing that I have a concern about is in the contract, it talked about privacy and security, that they use measures to protect the security and privacy, but they cannot guarantee the security and confidentiality through its service, and they're not obligated to do so. So it has the right to review and monitor your content and communications. So they have security measures, but they don't guarantee all the data they obtain by surveillance will be safe. So that concerns me. Is a pedophile going to reach out to my kids separately because now they know who my kid is because they're monitoring their content? So in closing, I think there's a couple things going on here. This works to desensitize kids from digital surveillance. AI is a huge issue. The fact that they can't guarantee anything, including protection. And I would just ask that we really reevaluate this, because this as a parent makes me incredibly uncomfortable, and I would probably opt out. I would like to opt out. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Christina?
Let's see if I can say anything that doesn't complement what they've already said, because it's exhausting just to think about it. Coming back from hearing some of the information you guys shared and the research you've done, kind of getting to this point. And so not being really familiar that we already have a system in place, Goguardian. And so it seems like one of the contributing factors of this is shifting the effort from existing staff to contract it out to somebody who is not familiar with our district, may not know our kids, and we don't know what training or the product we're getting. So I guess some questions I have was a request for proposal out for Gaggle? Was this a sole source effort? What was the criteria that made them the choice to go with that is supposed to demonstrate what is in the best interest of our kids? Because if we're already doing these efforts, but it is time, then why aren't we looking at different ways to fund our staff that we do have these efforts, or fund, you know, like reallocate and use what we do have, and maybe a little bit more, but just pulling and outsource that their integrity is being questioned here. And really, what is the advantage versus the disadvantage? It's just not adding up. There's just too many red flags that are coming to mind. And so I emailed you guys earlier, and I don't really want to repeat that, but yeah, it just seems like everybody kind of needs to digest this and really go back to what are we trying to accomplish here? Because there's got to be a better way than just this.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? No? No?
Hello. Sorry, I didn't write out a note because I wasn't really going to talk. Thought you were going to get away my last meeting. My name is Michelle Peterson. I have a graduating senior at Oakmont. Thank you. Very grateful for that. My question on this gaggle thing, because it really doesn't affect me because my kid is leaving, which I'm grateful for. Sorry, even though we had a great experience, but with all of this new stuff coming up, I'm like, oh, I'm glad. When I looked at Gaggle, one of the things I also saw in here, which I'm questioning, is what all the services that you're going to use out of it, because underneath their solutions, they also have this little thing. It's called Gaggle Therapy Services. When your AI tags somebody that is going to self-harm and their account gets locked, who's talking to them? Is it the Gaggle Therapy Services, which is an online therapist who had worked with them to create this? She had her own counseling for couples counseling. Or is it going to be our own wellness centers that we have spent a tremendous amount of money in to kind of talk with these kids that are self-harming, threatening, or putting out their derogatory comments, or however they did this? That's a question that I have. What all of this program are you buying? Because I did also see that with it, if you would do like their full service, which I'm assuming is a professional development, the safety management is like part of it. So I was just questioning that. My also other question would be is also, I realize that through the Google Docs, you see that that's how kids are bullying and things, but I do know that my student probably doesn't search profane things on her school Chromebook. She knows how to get around doing all that. A lot of things that are sent out there are on their kids' social media, which they do not do on their Chromebooks either. So thank you. I mean, I love that, you know, we have this technology, but just like with everything, a $10 an hour employee looking at it, or even as you go through Facebook or Twitter and their algorithms can get all sorts of messed up. So just think about it and talk about it and research it very thoroughly. Thank you.
Anybody else? Come on up. State your name for us.
My name's Nina Carranza. I just came here to find out more information because I just found about all of this today. So I don't have a lot of research done yet, but what I do know, I oppose from what I have heard. And I just think it would be important for all the parents across the district to be aware of any changes and additions to the way that the children are tracked. Thank you.
Anybody else? Turn to the board for questions, comments, concerns, or clarifications.
Just maybe just summarize what I'm hearing from the public, and the biggest concern is outsourcing this, because I realize at any job you're going to be monitored, and problem is, who are we allowing to watch our kids? And I think that's the kind of flat. That's the issue. Care about the safety of our kids, and so this is the tension that we have. Is we care about our kids. We don't want to see anything happen. And this is the right way to go about doing it. I'll leave it at that right now. Oh, actually, and then when is the school site safety plan? Isn't there's an annual school site safety plan? When is that? I was just wondering, just from a comprehensive safety, is this it might be nice to examine everything that we're doing, and does this fit in properly, and is this the right use of money? But that, okay.
Anything?
Yeah, I don't have anything different to add. I think it's that challenge of, you know, how do we know or not know that this is better than what we already have? So that's where my question came in. How many things do we get flagged in a typical school year? And what additional things would get caught if we did have this? And those are all kind of hypothetical, really hard to address type of questions.
One more thing is can we insource this again? So right now, these notifications from Goguardian are coming to assistant principals. Can we be creative about where else does it go to wellness center instead? I don't know. That's just, again, is something else we can do in-house too.
Somebody
Or
can put in
Christmas
there,
break.
somebody could be saying, I'm going to do self-harm and researching. And where we have a liability is we're supposed to be monitoring 24/7 because we have the system. So if something were to happen and we didn't act on it quickly, we're now liable for it. And so therein lies the issue in how that kind of happens. And so it's hard because it just gets dumped into a file and an assistant principal has to go check the file. And that can happen days, sometimes weeks later. And on any given weekend, there could be 10 to 20 of those alerts for self-harm especially. So that's why you see it. And with COVID, all of this went through the roof. And this is why you're seeing a growth in all of this now. So that's the other side of it.
So I think the statistics of what's happening on the weekends would be good for us to understand. So if you're thinking it's about 10 to 20.
Changes.
Okay. But that might be good for us to understand as we talk through this.
Are other local schools, you know, either in town or in the county that use this?
Yeah, there's extensive.
Yeah, that might be helpful to know too, just because I think we've never heard of it. At least I hadn't, you know, prior to this. So,
My question is, in this software space, are there more than one vendors? Are there a variety, or is this the predominant? I don't know who would have it.
Say there's, you know, solidly 4 or 5 vendors that are kind of the top folks, and then there's obviously some smaller companies out there that perform in the same space. It's important to know that one requirement school districts do have is to meet your RCIPA compliance. So that's your obscene material filtering. And in order to do that on web-based devices like Chromebooks, this is one of the products that does that.
And did we look at the other vendors in the space, or? how
We did,
do that?
obviously, sorry, we obviously reevaluated Goguardian for can it meet these needs? And then Gaggle being one of the recommended products that we viewed, we kind of honed in on that a little bit further. We can obviously do some more research from some of the smaller companies out there. That's something that we didn't spend a whole lot of time doing.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to take action on this tonight based on the number of questions that we received throughout the day. And I know many of us were busy doing things at school sites today, didn't have time to really dig much deeper into it. So that's why I asked if we could take a little bit of a pause and make sure that we have answers to these questions, primarily so that the board can make an informed decision one way or another. So does staff need anything else from us, or do you understand what we're looking for? Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next item, which is the next regularly scheduled meeting, which is June 9th. And as you've already heard tonight, we've talked about a few things that will come back that day. Pending agenda items, there's a bunch for the 9th and a couple here. Being in July, we got a couple items into next school year. Board and staff comments. Well, start over at Brad and work our way around this way.
Just want to say thank you to the board for appointing Mr. Sloan and Mrs. Cutts as interim principals at their 2 respective schools. They have a long history with Roseville Joint. They've done an outstanding job as leaders at their school, and looking forward to working with them in their new roles. So thank you.
Great.
I just wanted to talk about real quick serving on the interviews today for Oakmont's Health Academy. It's an annual thing they do over there. Got to interview 6 outstanding soon to be graduating seniors and admire what they've done and where they're going. They're going to do some amazing things out there. Just a quick congratulations to Wood Creek's boys volleyball for winning the NorCal championship. There's no state for boys volleyball, but that's the next best thing. So Division II championship. Granite Bay boys baseball won a section title. They advanced to NorCal. We still got students in track. State meet is coming up this weekend. And last but not least, because I can't go to every one of them, just a huge congratulations to the class of 2022. They've gone through a lot. They deserve their moment next week. and I wish them all the best. I get to go to 3 of the graduations, can't go to them all, but just want to say congratulations to the class of 2022. Big things await.
I'm looking forward to going to 2 graduations next week. So also congratulations to all the seniors. And I've enjoyed this past week meeting with different teachers, and I met with a counselor out at Antelope High School. And I just feel like we have phenomenal staff, and I appreciate everyone, and they've worked really hard this year. So I wish them a good summer.
I'm just excited about graduation. I am popping into 3 of them. It is unfortunate that we can't go to every single one. I know my son's excited about finals. And I wanted to thank Jen and Craig. This is so silly, you guys, but I loved the intervention call. So they put me on the, I don't know if it's the intervention committee. I don't know what it's called. Intervention committee. The very first of many meetings, just looking at that intervention period that each of the campuses have, and that makes me so excited. So I want to thank you for, I think Craig reached out to me about doing that, because that's, yeah, no, I really, really liked that. I really am passionate about that. So thanks for remembering that about me and inviting me. So I look forward to seeing kind of what shakes out from all of that.
Intervention period that we didn't.
We probably do.
Yeah. Let's see. I also was at the Health Academy exit interviews today here at Oakmont. Great seeing a lot of kids I don't know and a few kids I do know as they went through these interviews. And as was mentioned by John, just incredible caliber of kids, and exciting hearing about all the colleges and universities that they're heading off to as they pursue their endeavors. It was, I think one thing that was really cool is having one of the interviewers on our panels was a graduate from the program, 10 plus years ago, and is in the medical profession now. And it was great to see that and have him interacting with the students. I was also really impressed with the breadth of experience of interviewers. We had surgeons there and physical therapists and RNs and a bunch of people that knew really what they were asking questions about, rather than me and John, who really didn't know anything about that stuff, but we were there. Yeah, we were there asking the questions, but it was nice to see all the engaged partners we have out there in the community. I know we don't have our RCA rep here, but I just wanted to again express my thanks. I know they reached a ratification on the tentative agreement on the contract. We're going to be seeing that in the near future. I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's just refreshing to be in an organization where labor negotiations are efficient and non-hostile. And I appreciate that, especially this year, get a contract done before it actually takes effect, which is just wonderful. So, and then since we met last, I completed my master's in governance. So I know you guys love hearing me talk about governance, so I'll be talking about it a little bit more. And I think with that, ready to adjourn. So thanks, everybody.